Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we look at how India's anti-khalistan propaganda machine manages to sink to even the most ridiculous levels given the chance. Here in the UK, a powerful spokesman for the Sikh community warns the British Prime Minister to launch his 1984 Blue Star inquiry before July, or else the community will ditch its support of his party. Will Starmer listen? Well, he does tend to sway with the wind, so maybe this could be the gust that finally wakes him up. We look at a viral video of a US senator demanding India gives Kashmir an independence referendum, doing the rounds on social media. Well, unfortunately, all is not quite what it seems. Elon Musk's dad has just landed in Delhi. What does it mean for US-India relations? And sport has always been very close to the heart of the Sikh community, so it's a delight to be able to salute the first Sikh female footballer to captain the nation of England. More on that in today's show. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers. I hope everybody had an amazing weekend. One thing I have noticed is that our viewers are down a little. I don't know if we're missing counts or what's going on. Maybe a little shadow banning, we'll have to see. So remember, we appreciate your views, but we also appreciate you sharing with your friends, your family, and all of your contacts to try to push up the viewers and subscribers. It's muchly appreciated as you're as much a part of the show as we are. So back to you, Angus.
Indeed, we do need that feedback, so do let us know your feedback on negative even as well as positive, so all appreciated. But yes, carrying on today, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world, and at the end of the show, as always, we will indeed be taking a look at some of your feedback and of course your comments, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, lots to get through this morning. What are you going to start us off with this morning then?
This silliness just keeps coming. The Hindutva media has reached a new low when it comes to trying to fit in an anti-khalistan swing to any of their stories. Now, here in Canada, it's much like the US, much like the UK, where there are renters who overstay their leases or they just fail to continue making their rent payments. Now, this story here came out of Canada, but it was published in Chandigarh. And what I found hilarious is that it is about a group who is overstaying at a rental. They haven't paid rent since January. The landlord's got to take all of these expensive legal maneuvers to try and get them evicted. However, they bring it into a khalistan spin because there is a khalistan flag on the front of the residence. Now, this person who's trying to process the eviction and get them out of his property comes up and says that this is an unauthorized flag. Now, in Canada, I don't know about anywhere else in the world, but if you're a renter, you don't need permission to put a flag up on the house if you're renting it. That is up to you. You've got that right. Now, it's not a permanent fixture, which that would be a different story. As you can see by the image on your screen, it's tied with, looks like maybe some kind of a material or maybe even black tape or something. But in any event, hey, it's Canada. It could be hockey tape. Who knows? But the point being is that it's so ridiculous to bring the fact that the khalistan flag is there. So he's claiming that it intimidates him and scares him, and it upsets and intimidates the community. Now, this is just absurd. Never have I heard such rubbish when it comes to an eviction. Like, it's just crazy. Now, also on the screen, there's a screen grab from an X post. Unfortunately, excuse me, it doesn't come out very clear, but if you actually go to X and watch the video, it's funny because most of these people that are in the house that he accuses of overstaying and not paying rent since January, they all look like, well, they just don't have turbans and they seem to be more westernized. Or I'm thinking that it might even be just a staged media pile to try and push some silly narrative about Khalistan and about Sikhs and that. Because, first of all, if they are all students, which is what he alleges, they're all students here on student visas, there are ways to deal with it. And when they are failing to pay and they are, apparently 12 in the house and such, he could look at going to the immigration board and say, what is my recourse here? Are they actually students? Which he's doubting in some of his statements, that they're not actually students. So therefore, if they've shown him student visas and they're not actually students, well, there might be some way to wiggle around the eviction laws and look at dealing with the immigration issues. However, with that said, as it goes on here, so I'm just going to pull up another victim landlord in Ontario. Tenants have not paid since January 2025. Now, as I said, this is an issue, and that's fine. It is a real inconvenience for the homeowners who are renting out and just trying to make it by month to month. Now, this particular owner goes on to say that I'm paying the mortgage, property tax, and insurance out of my pocket. Kumar said, "This is putting me under extreme mental stress. I myself live in a rented house and have my own expenses. These tenants are making my life miserable." So he goes on, and here's where it comes up to the Khalistan tie-in here. Kumar also claims that the Khalistan flag tied outside the house was put up without his permission. "I'm very scared by these kind of activities, and the neighborhood is also unhappy," he said. "Authorities need to intervene. We've always lived peacefully as a community, and this is creating unnecessary tensions." Now, I feel for landlords, I really do. But at the end of the day, this is a business venture. It can't be taken personally, and you can't let emotion get in the way of common sense when it comes to the business. Now, you are posting people's images and videos or videos of these individuals on social media, and this brings up privacy issues. You can see from the angle of this camera that it's actually affixed to the house. So is he actually filming people coming and going as they are on this property, which would be a real privacy concern and a legal concern? Also, the fact that he is labeling them all as Khalistani and as a threat, well, we know that's a pile of crap, because you know what? If they were true Sikhs and Khalistan supporters, then chances are they would be paying their bills and acting in a much more honorable way. This, to me, looks like a staged, just an event trying to, again, push a bad image on the Khalistan movement and on Sikhs, and make it harder for them to get rentals by going public this way. Of course, you're going to have that bias of certain members of the community now that are going to see this and say, we don't want to rent to people of Sikh heritage or of people that are known to support the Khalistan referendum, a peaceful and democratic process, Angus. It's just a new low for the Hindutva media to try and slander the Sikh community and the Khalistan community. It's just ridiculous. At the very best, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that the word ridiculous just sums this story up. In reality, what is this story? This story is about a bunch of students in this city who are late on their rent payments. They're clearly student renters. Now, I know people very well who actually are landlords to students. Renting to students as a landlord is an absolute nightmare. Students are the worst tenants, and I don't want to tarnish all students with the same brush, but they are the worst tenants you could possibly want. I was a student once, and I was a student tenant, and I was a nightmare. They are terrible. They wreck the place. They have parties. They're late on the rent, etc., etc. That's the story here. The real story is a bunch of young students being students, what they are. They're just behind on the rent, and they're not making great tenants. But this is a landlord for students. Students actually make, financially speaking, one of the best tenants, because the yield, as it's called, financially speaking, people who rent housing to students know that their yield, their return on their investment is much, much, much higher than any other, because that return on investment has to be higher to repay the pain of having students as your tenants. So that the reality is this guy's doing very well, probably making a very good living out of these students. So the real story is nightmare tenants, they're students, that's what they do. They're just doing what they do. And students tend to fly flags on a regular basis, whether it's Marxist revolutionaries or whether it's Khalistanis, it doesn't matter. That is what young lads do, or young ladies, whatever. So the real story on this, James, as you of course picked up, it's all about simple racism, simple anti-Khalistan propaganda that's been picked up. It's somehow, can we spin an anti-Khalistan story on this? It's nothing to do with Khalistan. You may as well say, if you're tarnishing all Khalistanis with being bad tenants and bad people, what if one of these people had red hair? Are you saying that everybody with red hair is a bad person? What if one of them was in a wheelchair? Are you saying that all disabled people are bad people? That is in effect what you're saying, just the fact that they were flying a Khalistan flag. That is absolutely, utterly irrelevant to the story. But what it does point out, James, as you rightly say, the whole point of raising this story is the fact that this is just an absolutely prime example of Indian propaganda stooping to any lowest level it can find to try and somehow stain and smear the Sikh community. That's really what's going on here. And it just shows, and propaganda, there's always a fine line with propaganda between credibility and effectiveness, and when it then crosses that line into sort of ridiculous, laughable risibility, let's call it, to use a big word. And I think this has crossed that line, and this once again shows and demonstrates, I think, why India is losing the information battle is because their propaganda, their anti-Sikh, anti-Khalistan propaganda has reached ridiculous proportions. This is why people have lost any interest in India's propaganda. People are laughing at it now, and that is indeed what we're doing, James.
Absolutely. Now, I'm willing to bet that because this is in Metro Toronto, if I went into one of these houses near this community and I hung a Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team flag upside down or put my Vancouver Canucks flag up the wave in front of the house, the community would be a lot more upset than a Khalistan flag, let me tell you. I don't think that they're intimidated by a Khalistan flag in any way, shape, or form, and I don't think that this guy's intimidated by it either. I think it's just a pile of crap. And, I just couldn't believe the story and what depths of low that they're hitting right now to try and tie that in. Just ridiculous, Angus. So with that said, though, let's talk about some more silliness and ridiculousness. Yes, Elon Musk's father making the news because he has landed down in Delhi. He is looking to make a name for himself there in India, while his son is still trying to make inroads and agreements to bring the EVs through Tesla, as well as his Starlink systems and other business ventures into the country. The question is, with the on-again, off-again tumultuous relationship between Elon Musk and Elon Musk, the question is, will this be a help or a hinder to Elon's plans for India? Now, essentially what's going on is that he is making a very public appearance because he has been appointed, and this is Errol I'm talking about, Elon's father, and he is a businessman of his own, but he's also been a politician and also with questionable business ties to the diamond mine industry way back decades ago, and whether or not there may have been ties to the blood diamond industry. But regardless, he has been working through different companies and now has been given a global advisory position on the board for a company called Servotech. Now, Servotech is a power systems company. They used to focus more on LED, but now they've expanded to other areas of energy and alternative clean energy specifically, as well as EV charging stations and technology to support the EV movement. Now, he has shown up and he is going to be doing a 4-day visit, and he's going to not only be making the visit to the facilities of Servotech and to meet with the board members, to meet with employees, and to tour the facilities that are there in India, but he's also planning a pilgrimage to a temple there, the Ram Temple, and that has sparked intrigue. But that is because of the fact that he is Elon's son in many ways. Now, of course, we know that Errol is a South African engineer. He's been involved in business, and his movement into India, of course, at this level will give him the ability to rub shoulders with a lot of political power players, as well as corporate executives and business leaders. Now, he can use this as an opportunity to flush out, Tesla, and block them from getting in when it comes to the charging technology. Or it could go the other way, that with all of this advanced technology for charging stations and infrastructure throughout the country, as they expand and rapidly roll that out, will that mean that they want to bring Teslas into the market to supplement the other EVs? It's really kind of a wash either way. There's not a real benefit, not a real drawback, unless one or the other makes a big move. And when I say that, it's because the people are watching it, not so much because it's Elon Musk, but because he is the father of Elon Musk. People see this as an opportunity to try to warm up to him, but also to have an intermediary between the two entities to try and bring the servotech and the Tesla and Starlink and other technologies a bit closer so that they can actually complement each other within the industry of India, because it is a massive, massive market with huge potential to not only have the inroads there in India, but also to help open doors in other international markets through successes should they take place in India, Angus.
Yes, I think this is interesting, because why does it matter? Why does it matter what Elon Musk's father does in India? Well, it really matters because, of course, his relationship to Elon Musk. Elon Musk is one of the richest people on this planet. So when he makes decisions, the planet listens. And of course, well, there is whatever the relationship is between Elon and his father does matter, whether it's negative or positive, because Elon Musk is known to make quite rash and rapid decisions, sometimes flying in the face of logic or evidence or whatever. And of course, if Errol upsets Elon, it could have an impact, and vice versa. So it does matter, I think, what Elon's father gets up to. And also that you've got to put this in the context of India itself. Narendra Modi's government since 2014 have adopted a pretty isolationist agenda. They have almost deliberately tried to push away foreign direct investment, FDI, into India. Because what they're trying to do, from an isolationist point of view, is try and grow and develop India's own economy. Ironically, it's a little bit like Trump's efforts. MAGA, it's make India great again. We could debate that subject at great length, but basically, Narendra Modi's attitude, his agenda, has been basically, no, we'll grow India's own economy to the benefit of Indians, and we will turn away any foreign investment. Yet there are all these massive Western companies desperate to get into India to invest. Now, obviously, they're doing it for their own interests as well, but ultimately, India cannot grow, it cannot meet its full potential if it turns away foreign direct investment. FDI is the lubrication that keeps the global engine going. Money moves to where it's needed. This is, in simple economic terms, it is a necessary methodology. It is a necessary mechanism that builds global GDP, not just national GDPs, but global GDP. And there's this huge weight of money desperate to pour into India. I was going to call him Errol Flynn, that shows my age. Errol Musk he's clearly desperate to invest in India, as indeed is Elon Musk, likewise, and many other billionaires desperate to get into India to invest there because they know there is demand, they know there is huge potential for growth there, and that could be to India's own interest. But as I say, Modi has adopted this isolationist stance, which I think, in my opinion, and the opinion of many economists, and indeed within India, have actually said this is not the right way. We are restricting India's growth because we're turning away foreign direct investment. Punjab, for example, another great example, it needs FDI, it needs that investment from, certainly from the agricultural and the industrial sectors to help grow its economy. Why is it being turned away from the Punjab? I have no doubt the Punjab would welcome foreign investment. Now, foreign investment always comes at a price, but ultimately you still need it to grow, to fulfill your potential. So yeah, this matters, as I say, James. I mean, yeah, there's all the details about Elon Musk himself and what he's specifically intending, but it's the baggage he brings with it. He potentially influences Elon Musk, and it's Elon Musk that could have a huge impact, both positively and negatively, on India. So yeah, I think this is definitely worth watching.
Absolutely. And I'll just read one quote there that they said, Elon Musk's visit is a milestone for Servotech as we push towards our Vision 2027 to redefine renewable energy globally. And that's part of their plan for their building of that industry. Now, it goes on to say that his expertise and global perspective will amplify our efforts, but his interest in India's cultural roots, like the Ram Temple visit, shows a deeper commitment to understanding this nation. So my question is, will he be visiting the Golden Temple or any of the other really important, significant cultural facilities? Or is he just going to deal with the Hindu majority there? And also just of interest is that it is good to see him there, but of course he's associated with an Indian company. But when I say it's good to see him there, it's just in reference to the last meeting that Narendra Modi and Elon Musk had, where Elon Musk didn't even bother making the trip to India. He just did basically an online video conference call or Skype call, essentially, with, a very, very important negotiation and world power when it comes to his opportunities to break into that market in India. I would think that he would have been a bit more respectful to actually show up. At least his father's there. But then again, he's representing an Indian company, Angus.
Indeed, yes. How these movers and shakers go about their daily business, and we mere minions just watch and comment accordingly and try and interpret their games of power and control. Indeed. Right, James. Let's move on to my story. I've got 3 stories today, and I'll just cover them quite quickly due to the pressures of time. But basically, the first one is quite an important one, and it's a very, very significant one if you're here in the UK. And it's very significant if you are, in fact, a Labour Party MP, because this could affect you. In The Guardian yesterday, the Sunday Guardian, Devinderjit Singh, he's a senior advisor, he's a main consultant to the Sikh Federation UK. He's an ex-civil servant. He's a very powerful person, a very powerful individual in the Sikh community. His voice should be listened to. When he speaks on behalf of the community, then people need to listen, because he does carry an awful lot of weight and influence in the Sikh community here in the UK. And he's been talking to a journalist in The Guardian. The Guardian is I'd say, a very good newspaper. It always writes stories about, it always focuses on the Sikh community whenever there's a story or an issue. It's always The Guardian that comes up first with it. Slightly left-leaning, left-of-centre newspaper, and that's probably why. Anyway, Devinderjit has spoken to a journalist, and there's been an article came out yesterday around this discussion. And Devinderjit has said that British Sikhs are now threatening to no-platform Labour MPs. That means basically we're not going to give you any support, we're not going to let you be politicians on any of our properties. Essentially what they've said is, because of this lack of public inquiry into the British complicity in the Daba Sahib massacre of 1984, we're not going to support you anymore. And he said Sikhs in Britain are frustrated, and the real shot across Labour's bows here are, we are thinking about voting for Reform UK. Now, for those who are not aware of what's going on in British politics, we are going through a seismic and almost geologically scaled era of change in British politics. We've had the 2-party politics, to some extent 3-party. We have Labour on the left, Conservative on the right, and somewhere in the middle, the Liberal Democrats. Well, we have a new party. It literally only started just over a year ago, called the Reform Party. Slightly right of centre. Quite often the left try and smear it as, oh, they're far right. It's not a far right party. It's actually, traditionally, it is a conservative party. It represents very traditional conservative values. And and in fact, in the last election, it actually stood about 3 or 4 Sikh candidates in various Sikh community areas. So it is definitely, most definitely not a racist party. It is an anti-immigration party. One of its key points is it is an anti-immigration party, but that has nothing to do with racism, as I often try and laboriously explain over and over again. Being anti-immigration is not being racist. It is just saying we have too many people coming into this country, we need to close the borders. And that is essentially what the Reform Party stand for. And this is why many Sikhs actually, as it turns out, do support reform anyway. As in fact many Muslims do. Many of our minority communities do support reform. So what Devinderjit has said is that more than 450 Gurdwaras, charities, associations and university societies have written to Keir Starmer demanding that he honours this pledge, this promise he gave to launch this inquiry into 1984, British involvement in 1984. Now, this letter, which was dated the 1st of June, said, quote, "The Sikh community was hugely disappointed there has been a deafening silence to all the recent letters. It called for timelines for this inquiry that would investigate British involvement in this operation and anti-Sikh measures in Britain when Margaret Thatcher was in power." Now, post-Margaret Thatcher, we had David Cameron, another Conservative Prime Minister. Cameron ordered his most senior civil servant to investigate Blue Star, but his review, which said the British officer's advice was ignored by the Indian Army, disappointed Sikhs. Labour politicians, including Starmer himself in a 2022 letter, have repeatedly promised this independent inquiry since. Campaigners who had hoped an inquiry would be launched before the end of the 40th anniversary, that was last year, are now warning that Labour MPs face being banned from Sikh temples and events. We call this no platformed. So Labour MPs are going to be banned from ever visiting Sikh temples and events. Regrettably, we are today being forced to put the Labour leadership on notice, the letter said. If a judge-led public inquiry is not announced in Parliament by the end of July, the Sikh community will implement a no-platform policy for all Labour MPs from the 1st of August that are not supporting a judge-led public inquiry. Sikhs are well respected and can build political alliances. Sikhs may need to make it their business to campaign with others locally and nationally to get the wider public to punish Labour for broken promises. And Dominijit said talks were underway with the Liberal Democrats, that's the centre party, but a very minority party, Reform and the SNP, that's the Scottish Nationalist Party, about support for an inquiry. He said every Labour MP will be written to, adding there are 105 seats that we're monitoring where the 6 votes will matter, including Ilford North, Ilford South, Wolverhampton, Birmingham and Derby seats. So this is a big story, and I don't think many people realise just how big this is. The Reform Party, at the moment, against all odds, expectations, belief. You go back 12 months ago, and you said Reform could form the next government in 2029, our next general election. Nigel Farage could be our next Prime Minister. People would literally have laughed at you and said they'd be ridiculous. Yet, as of last weekend, Reform lead the polls by several percent. Reform Party, at this current moment, if there was a general election tomorrow, they would be the next government. That is how significant the Reform Party have become. Labour, under Keir Starmer, is absolutely tumbling. He is one of the most unpopular Prime Ministers we have ever had. He is failing at every turn. He has betrayed the Sikh community at every turn. He's made all these promises, like they all do in opposition. He's promised to launch this inquiry. He's promised to free Jagtar Singh Johal. What has he done since last July when he got into power? Nothing. Deafening silence. I have to say, this is a real moment for the Reform Party. There are 1 million votes, 1 million British votes up for grabs here for a political party of the Sikh community. If you ally and align yourself with the Sikh community, you will almost instantly win a large portion of those 1 million votes. My message to any Reform Party supporters, this is a key moment. The Sikh community, in my personal opinion, of course voting is a very personal thing, but in my opinion, the Sikh community should ditch the Labour Party. They're not representing you, they're betraying you, as did the Conservative Party. What have you got to lose by supporting the Reform Party? But now is the time when the Reform Party are still formulating their policies. This is an opportunity that will be here for a very short time, where you can almost effectively bribe the Reform Party. Say, look, you launched it, you promised to launch the inquiry and deliver it. That's a key word, you deliver it. You campaign for Jagtar Singh Johal. You represent Sikh issues. We will support you. And I suspect the Reform Party will listen. This is one of those rare opportunist moments in politics from both sides, from the Reform Party to win up to 1 million votes, from the Sikh side to use the weight of the voting base to actually influence politics, get a new powerful party on side to represent your your community, this is one of those moments when a beautiful political marriage could form. Dabinderjit, very, very shrewd operator. He knows how things work. Dabinderjit has approached reform at absolutely the right time. This is a time when we could see, again, a bit of a seismic shift in the politics of the Sikh community. And from a personal perspective, I think the Sikh community have nothing to fear from the Reform Party. Quite the opposite. I think the Reform Party, with a little bit of arm twisting, saying, look what you could benefit from, 1 million Sikh votes, the Reform Party could ultimately end up being one of the key political voices of the Sikh community, James. This is big, big stuff.
That is big news, Angus. And you thought it was, or I thought it was rough when Pierre Poilievre went from such a substantial lead over the Liberals. In such a short time, he totally got decimated off the polls and ultimately lost not only the election, but also his personal seat, not his personal, but his own elected seat. So now he's just kind of out there scrambling. And it is incredible to look at how the turn of events can so quickly change. And it reminds me of a joke I saw the other day. What's the difference between a toilet seat or a toilet and Pierre Poilievre? A toilet has a seat. That's how. And if the Liberal Party's not careful over there, and if Keir Starmer's not careful over there, some other people are going to be losing seats as well, it sounds like, Angus.
Indeed, and I don't want to talk too much about British politics, but there is a lot of change going on. The Labour Party are in serious trouble here. The Conservative Party are disappearing into the abyss. The former governmental party are literally disappearing into single figures of support in the polls. That's how unpopular they are. Nigel Farage, as I say, at the current moment, could be the next Prime Minister. And interestingly, the left are terrified of the reform for obvious reasons. They realise that the main opposition now in the UK is the Reform Party. They are doing everything they can to try and claim that Reform is a racist party. And it's not. Nigel Farage, again, a very, very clever guy. He won the Brexit referendum for the UK. That's how influential and clever this guy is. He has very deliberately gone around removing the far right, any far right elements in the Reform Party. They've been kicked out, kicking and screaming, and they really don't like it. But Farage has said and made it very, very clear, we are not a far right party. We do not tolerate racism in any form whatsoever. He's actively gone out there to recruit people from the ethnic minorities into the party as both councillors and indeed MPs. And so he's very, very publicly said, this is no home for racists or far-right people. We want to represent all ethnic minorities. And this is why I think he's really moving it back towards the centre ground, still right of centre, but much more towards mainstream centre-right. This is why it's doing so well. And this is why I genuinely think the Sikh community have this absolutely amazing opportunity, that if this marriage could be tied up between the Sikh community and Reform, suddenly the next government could actually genuinely deliver on all these issues, whether it's transnational repression, whether it is Jagtar Singh Johal, or whether it is, of course, this Blue Star inquiry. Things could happen. So we'll see. Anyway, I will follow that, obviously, with great interest. And I might even reach out to Davinderjit to get his thoughts on this, because it is a fascinating story. But anyway, let's move on, James. A couple of other very quick stories I want to cover today. And I'm absolutely delighted to say sport is a huge part of the Sikh community. We often talk about sport and how Sikhs, of course, through their martial heritage, their wonderful military prowess, and of course the philosophy of Sikhi really is that it encourages physical well-being, it encourages activity, encourages getting out there, getting active, it encourages looking after the body. Ultimately, the historical roots of that is because if you want to be a good fighter, a survivor, you've got to be a good soldier, a good fighter, and to be a good soldier, you've got to be fit, healthy, and strong, etc., etc. And that is the heritage roots of why sport is so important, because it is competitive. And I'm delighted to say, as part of all that, in the context of all that, is that Sikh women are no exception to this. Of course, we see the men regularly at all the events doing their martial arts, their wonderful displays. But of course, the ladies are no exception to this. And in the world of football, women's football is growing, slowly but surely, but it is growing. And here in the UK, last month, just a few weeks ago, a young lass, was called Sarit Kaur Binning, who plays football for Wolves Women FC. I think that's Wolverhampton in the Midlands here in the UK. She was selected to captain the England team, the under-16 girls team, in an international fixture against France. So this young girl, under 16, has been chosen to captain her national side in the game of football, as coming from the Sikh community. The first time a Sikh lady has been given such an honour. It's a massive achievement. I mean, I've got to take my hat off to this girl. Well done to you. And the news, it's slowly filtered out. We've only just discovered it. I mean, this is about 2 or 3 weeks after the event, and it is slowly filtering out across social media. ESPN did actually only pick it up just a couple of days ago. ESPN, one of the mainstream sports channels, they picked up this story. The Sikh Press Association obviously heard about it, and they're spreading it around the media. ESPN picked it up, and all these other ones, Versus on Instagram, likewise, they picked up and spread it around. But as they say, and rightly so, when we look at the statistics, South Asian representation at the top of English football has been shockingly low for ages. Less than 1% of women's Super League players have South Asian backgrounds, while grassroots participation stands at around 15%. And as they say, sometimes it takes one trailblazer to make a distant dream feel much closer to reality. So well done to Sarit Kaur Binning, a fantastic achievement, but also in terms of what it represents for the Sikh community, a huge step forward, a great example of what young girls can do, what young ladies can do in sport here in the UK. If you're from the Sikh community, you can break those barriers, you can achieve great things, and you can indeed, as young Sarit has done, you can captain our national side in a sport. So a great achievement, James.
Absolutely. And we're actually seeing a big swing towards women's sports in North America, whether it's in Canada or the US on this side of the pond. So opportunities such as this are very prominent and very important, because as female sports get more into the limelight, of course, they create more revenue and give young ladies like this the opportunity to go beyond leading their own nation, but also in terms of their professional careers to actually lead pristine and Premier League teams. And that's just an amazing story for her. So congratulations. Absolutely.
Indeed. So well done, Sarit. A fantastic achievement. And as I say, the example this sets to the youth in the Sikh community is absolutely fantastic. So well done, Sarit. That's brilliant to report that one. Right, and then quickly just moving on to my final story. I'm going to show you a video. This is a very powerful and very interesting video that is whizzing around social media as we speak. Just watch this.
Folks, you can call these people terrorists in the Kashmir, but the real problem we all know is, and no one wants to say it, is that India has refused to hold an honest plebiscite, as they were required to do by the United Nations, for the last 40 years. And if the people of Kashmir had a right to vote on their own destiny, they would probably vote not to be part of India, and there would be no conflict. There would be no people killing other people. There would be no excuse for 1 million Indian soldiers to be stationed up in northern India to repress those people who want nothing more than a right to vote as to whether they be a part of India or not, which is what the United Nations required them to do. India has been condemned by Amnesty International, by Asia Watch, by honest people who are looking and trying to support human rights around the world. They've been condemned over and over and over again. The examples Mr. Burton gives are only a few examples. These people are trying to fight for their rights in the Kashmir, and as a reaction, the Indians saying, we're not going to let them get away with it. So they are condoning monstrous human rights abuses against the people of Kashmir. It can be stopped very easy. Let those people in the Kashmir determine their own destiny through the ballot box rather than through bullets. That's the bottom line. And if we do that, if we insist on that, if we send that message tonight with this little tiny cut of $8 million, I will tell you this much. The tensions on the subcontinent will subside. We will have done what is right, and in the long run, it will create a more peaceful world, because the people of the Kashmir will have their right to vote, and there will be no excuse for the violence that exists there today. So I plead with all of you, Come on, let's get beyond all of this rhetoric. Let's not talk about India as our old friend. Let's not create some false images of how we have to help this developing country. Let's get down to the facts. Let's get down to we must stand for human rights there and elsewhere because it furthers the cause of peace to do so. Let's send that message to India.
Wow, I mean, I couldn't put it better myself. I mean, what a powerful speech. I mean, that really raised the rafters. It basically said everything that we've been saying. And absolutely the fact that Kashmir needs this plebiscite, this referendum, because ultimately if Kashmir went independent, problem solved. Everybody's happy. Again, it just reiterates what we've been talking about over and over again, that the solution to the Kashmir, the Punjab problem is referenda, independence, khalistan, etc., etc. Now, that video did the rounds. And as it turns out, I tried to find the original of this video. I was thinking, I've got to find the original just to get a really good quality of this. And I couldn't, and I dug and dug, and I thought, why can I not find the original? It's very unusual not to be able to find this original speech. Well, it turns out this is Senator Dana Tyrone Rohrabacher today. Yes, this video was 29 years ago. This Rohrabacher, if I pronounce his name correctly, he was in the US House of Representatives from 1989 to 2019 in California. He was a member of the Republican Party. And, well, I won't bore you with the details of his background, but in other words, this video is 29 years old. So 29 years ago, we were still actually ranting, raving, talking, arguing, saying, why on earth are we trying to befriend India when it is so persecuting its minorities in such a manner that it is ignoring UN resolutions, it is not democratic, it is not allowing the normal democratic rule of law, etc., etc. Here we are 29 years later, and that is how relevant this speech is. And as somebody, or one or two people pointed out, actually, it doesn't matter how old this video is, it's still as relevant today, and in fact even more so today than it was 29 years ago. In other words, things haven't just not changed, things have got worse in India. 2019, that's 23 years after that video, Modi sent in 500,000 troops into Kashmir, took direct control, removed any democratic normal accountability of Kashmir, removed all the local democratically elected representatives, installed his own people, house arrested all those who'd actually been elected locally, and took direct control. Ripped up the constitution, completely ripped up the clause that gave Kashmir its special reserve status. That is what Modi's government have done 23 years after that speech. Never mind ignoring the UN call for a referendum, he then waded 500,000 troops in and took direct control. So in other words, that speech isn't just relevant today, it is more relevant than it ever has been, James. So it doesn't matter the fact that this video is 29 years old. These words have never been more true.
Can you imagine if he would have been successful 29 years ago? Can you imagine all of those lives that would have been saved? The bloodshed that would never have happened, the human rights abuses that people would not have endured, the pillar of the region that Jammu and Kashmir could be today. It's mind-boggling, Angus, that even today there's still the same argument and the same people saying, let's do something, but the majority are saying, no, but India's our friend. We can't upset Modi. We can't upset the BJP. Let's get the false narrative out there to get the people to calm down about this. But the funny thing is that Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all of these groups are still calling out India for the same atrocities decades later, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely. And those of you who are eagle-eyed in the audience will notice at the top of the video, the date is the 5th of June, 1996. So almost exactly to the day, 29 years ago, this video was released. And of course, again, the one point here is, well, it just shows you've got to be careful what you believe and watch on social media, because people just assumed this was literally like over last week, this speech. No, it wasn't. It was actually 29 years ago. And this is a common tactic in propaganda, is to bring up old stuff and pretend it's just happened. So that is an example of that. But in fact, ironically, it does point to this very thing, that actually even 29 years ago, we weren't just talking about this, and it was relevant 29 years ago. It just shows that in 29 years, nothing has changed other than it's just actually got worse, the situation in Kashmir. And had, as you rightly say, James, had we listened 29 years ago and done something about it, we would not be in this situation now. India would be a very, very different place. India would actually be a much happier place. The Punjab, likewise, should have been given a referendum 29 years ago. Again, just think what a different place, again, Khalistan would be now. India would be thriving. It wouldn't be this hugely polarized, fractious, angry, militant country that it is now, this anti-democratic country that just laughs in the face of the rule of law. It would actually now be that potential superpower, but it's not. As many commenters have said, Modi and the Hindutva army, the Hindutva RSS extremists have held India back. They've held its potential success back by decades with this agenda. All they need to do is grant democratic secessionism to J&K, to Punjab. Let Khalistan happen. Let's have that border strip of Khalistan. Let it happen. And what a difference that would make to India as a subcontinent. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, James, but it just shows a fascinating video. And wow, what a speech. As I say, we couldn't put it better ourselves.
And for the record,
right,
Angus,
on that note, let's move on to
quality image from back then.
Absolutely right, indeed. So let's move on to our comment section. Loads of great comments. Thank you to our wonderful audience for your thousands of, certainly hundreds of comments that have been coming in. Wasik Mahmood starts us off today, and again, very presumptuous, but I would assume from the name that you are likely of Pakistani origin, and which actually makes the comment even more interesting. Because you say that Sikhs have come a long way, they've suffered an awful lot over decades. India should have protected them, but of course they treated them as they treat all minorities, in other words, badly. It's time Sikhs got an independent Punjab or Khalistan or whatever name suits them. Absolutely, Khalistan is the name of choice. It's certainly not easy. Freedom does always come at a cost. A small percentage of Sikhs are concerned about their future, but it is easy to imagine that they will get more benefits from Pakistan, China, as compared to, I think what you meant is as compared to India. Even if they are landlocked, it's more likely Pakistan will be visa-free, free trade and travel, free access to roads, etc. And of course, the port, the access to the sea, the Indian Ocean, would come probably via Pakistan. In other words, so this comment, again, I'm assuming it's from somebody from Pakistan origin, is absolutely right. It is once again from the Pakistan side saying, look, we treat the Sikhs as friends. We look after their gurdwaras, their places of worship. We always reach out the hand of friendship. It's a bit of a generalization because I do know there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, the hand of friendship does come across from Pakistan towards the Sikh community. As opposed to contrast that with how India treats the Sikh community, I think, well, it's very clear what that means, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And the beautiful thing about it is when people do come out and support each other, because at the end of the day, the whole movement, whether it is Khalistan, whether it is Kashmir, whether it is the Hindu movement or the Sikh movement or the Muslim movement, is that everybody wants to get to the same end goal. And that is to have a place where they can call home that is peaceful, that they can see a future for their future generations, their children, their grandchildren, and so forth. So when you can see that type of unity coming together, it is important. And when it comes to the landlocked issue that we talk about a lot and whether they have access to the ocean, let's not forget that there are a lot of countries in Europe and other parts of the world that are also landlocked, but they make it work. And I believe that whether Khalistan gets access to the ports in terms of land, or if they remain landlocked, I think that they have a very strong and bright future, and it can only benefit India in the long run.
Of course, and all the socio-economic foundations are there. They work. Pakistan has basically said we will be a friend to the Sikh community. In other words, we will be a friend to Khalistan. So that relationship, the foundations are already there. We do know that Pakistan would be a friendly neighbour to Khalistan. India, on the other hand, well, as Khalistan says, we don't want to be your enemies. We want to be your friend. We will be your trading partner. We will assist you. We will sell you our grain, our agricultural products, which you need to feed your people. We will do that quite happily and quite amicably. So the foundations are definitely there. So, and then there's a quite common theme in a lot of our comments, and it's very nice to see. I think we are growing our audience in Pakistan, and certainly the Pakistan community, the Pakistani diaspora. So welcome to those from the Pakistani diaspora. And do go tell your friends about us. Tell them that we exist. Baba Ashad says, Pakistan Zindabad, Khalistan Zindabad. So again, that hand of friendship between Pakistan and Khalistan, that support is there from the Pakistan community. And I'm just going to jump to TC's comments, actually, because TC likewise says, and you tried to post up this comment 3 times, it did get there, TC, in the end. And the Khalistan buffer zone, Zindabad, absolutely, this is really what it's all about, this is buffer zone between India and Pakistan. Sikhs in Pakistan also want the stability over Ahmad Asib. Pakistan have demonstrated their protection over the Gurdwaras, whether it's Kartarpur or whichever Gurdwaras, whichever places of worship on the Pakistan side of the border, is that Pakistan has respected and allowed that free flow of people into Pakistan from the Sikh community, saying, yes, you are very welcome. The Kartarpur corridor, prime example of this, you are very welcome from the Sikh community to come into Pakistan to visit your places of worship. And India, unfortunately, has not been, I would say, quite as benign towards its Sikh community and its free movement. And I did talk about some stories in the past about how the border has been closed to Sikhs, certainly in the northern parts in Ladakh area, who want to cross over into Pakistan, is that India has forced them to travel all the way down south, literally hundreds, if not thousands of miles to the south, to try and visit even family and relatives over that border. In other words, India has done everything it can to make life difficult for its Sikh community, whereas on the other hand, Pakistan have done the opposite, James. Again, compare and contrast.
Exactly, yeah. There's such a depth of difference there, but again, it is at the end of the day, where are the where are the motives coming from? And you have to weigh that out for both sides.
And Truth Sayer raises an interesting point, saying, look, you hate all this talk about racism and corruption within the Sikh community. We don't hire non-Sikhs, we talk about fraud, corruption, criminality in the community and their community only. Well, as you rightly say, well, it's all very well saying, oh, Sikhs have this bad element within their community. Well, they're human beings. Every community on the planet has bad apples, as we call them. We don't hear about organised crime in other Indian communities, the domestic violence that's rampant in their community. What about all of that? Exactly, James. In other words, the mainstream Indian media are very quick to report anything negative about the Sikh community, but they tend to gloss over, brush over, bury any actual nasty news about the Hindu community, for example. We do know there's an awful lot of desperately bad things that go on within the Hindu community.
Absolutely. And we can, I'm not going to call out any of the specific gangs, but you come to Canada, there are organized crime that is basically the Hindu groups. You've got the Sikh groups, you've got the Asian groups. So in reality, there is organized crime within all communities. That includes the Hindu community, and they're not special when it comes to this issue being voided over top of them. They are also involved. And when I say they, I'm talking about the gangsters, not the whole community. I'm talking about the small, very small subset of the community. But they are there. And there are these small subsets of the Hindu extremists that still believe that women are property, that, that rape is fine. And, so there's people in all communities that are bad apples. And you can't tell me that, that the Sikhs are the only ones in India that are involved in this, because we all know that that's just bullshit. We know the truth that There is a lot of criminality, and that's it.
Exactly, and we certainly do not smear all Hindus with negative values just because we report on some bad elements within the Hindu community. Quite the opposite. So, yeah, an absolutely key point that. Human talks about threat to literature, linguists. Oh, yeah, this is the threat. This is these are the methods that Hindutva have used to attack the Sikh community. The word is multilateral. Now, I picked up this comment because it just shows that every angle the Sikh community is being targeted by Hindutva, by these extremists, whether it's literature, whether it's the language, whether it's facially, religiously, of course, freedom of speech. All are parts of suppressing the community and their identity to live free. And essentially, as you say, it amounts to genocide. In other words, this persecution of India's minorities, including, of course, more than anybody, the Sikh community, is multilateral. They will literally attack every possible side of Sikhi just to try and genocide is the word that Human uses here. The Sikh community, James.
Absolutely. And it doesn't just translate to the linguistic, the religious, and the cultural, violence or removal, but also the actual physical violence that and disappearances that happen to even further that argument of a genocide, Angus.
Indeed. And stay safe. I'll just quickly go through this comment because we jump back to the Pakistan tie-up. Is you're absolutely right, saying that you would preserve the peace of Sikhs' demands towards sovereignty so that they can flourish in Punjab, do amazing stuff, and be that good neighbour to both India and Pakistan. Allow Sikhs the right to do their pilgrimages to places like Patna Sahib. India can then therefore be that majority Hindustan, that Hindu Rashtra we talk about. And the Kartarpur corridor is achieved by Pakistan. At least the world's militarised border is solved by peaceful means. Indeed, that is absolutely what we've been talking about over and over again. This khalistan, this corridor of peace to sit between the two countries is the ultimate solution. So thank you, stay safe, for that comment. Now, James, Canadian politics, this is interesting. Knockdown points out the fact that Anita Anand was actually, Anita Anand is the foreign minister who met with Jai Shankar recently to great backlash because she didn't mention anything about transnational oppression. She turns out she was Canada's defence minister when Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered by Hindutva terrorists. And as Knockdown says, any connection? Should she be under inquiry, not actually being given a promotion?
Well, and that's a tough one, Angus, because, when it comes down to it, I mean, the role of being the Minister for Defence really doesn't tie in to CSIS and the RCMP as they are completely separate departments. But again, where was the intelligence sharing between those two communities? Because I'm sure that there was overlap somewhere between military intelligence, if there is such a thing, and then law enforcement intelligence on the international scale. So again, it is, it's a difficult call to make, but one I think that definitely deserves more discussion.
Indeed. And my next set of comments, this is almost like a new section. We always have a chuckle over the comments, particularly because quite often a lot of comments are in broken English and they say one thing but actually meant something else. Or sometimes autocorrect changes even the context or even the meaning of some of the comments. They do make me laugh. And Hardal Singh says, welcome to the show. You guys made me laugh to start with the show. Well, a pleasure. We always have to make you laugh. But it's, of course, many of the comments. I put that in because it's some of the comments that make us laugh. And I've got a few examples here. SSI Singh, one of our regulars. Hi, Angus and James. Wishing you well. Thank you from my hearth. Now, of course, you meant thank you from my heart. But of course, we talk about double meanings. From the hearth. Well, of course, a hearth is around the fire. So again, the double meaning here is, well, thank you from sitting around comfortably around my fire hearth. So that could mean that. And Surjit Kondal says, thanks for Angus and James, a very new show. Well, again, I think you meant very nice show, but of course it came out as new show. Well, I suppose you could argue that we're almost a year old now, so we are a relatively new show. And Jasvinder, well, again, this one made me laugh. Very well said. Business before humanity. Yes, of course, this is talk about the trade deal trumping human rights. Money before human rights. British are And they were left hanging. And again, this made me laugh. It's like, fill in your own answer to this one. What are the British? A very good question. And I don't know, presumably you press send or something sent it before you could finish off your comment, Jasmine. But again, it's another classic example of comments that make us laugh, where they're not quite, they come out slightly different than intended. And I think this one does open up. What are the British, James? I'm sure the Canadians got, well, in fact, I'm not going to put you on the spot on that one, James, but I'll just say the British are, well, good and bad. Let's be diplomatic about it.
That's right. That's right. It's like the rest of the world, Angus. We've all got our strengths and weaknesses.
Indeed. But anyway, thank you for all your comments on those. I would say I always have a really good chuckle at some of the ones that have double meanings or don't come out quite as intended. And then final set, so we must rush through. Clocks counted down now. James looks 20 years younger with a turban. It suits him. Not easy wearing a turban. And TC, distinguished looking AI Sikhs, handsome pair of fellows. Thank you, TC. James has a little bit of work to do on the Punjabi though. Apparently I'm doing all right. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh. And Hardal Singh says, well done, Angus. Your Punjabi is improving by the day. Proud of you all. Thank you for that. Yes, Angus, that was bang on. Of course, that was my pronunciation from earlier. So, James, I think the feedback on well, firstly, we make very good sings with our turbans. And secondly, our Punjabi is getting there just a little bit step by step.
Yours more than mine, Angus. I'll have to start working on that more.
and in fact,
really
you say that, and I have to say... Yeah, and Harjit Dugal says, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh, to both sing Sahib Ji. Well, if I'd read that probably a year, 18 months ago, I wouldn't have really understood anything about that phrase. Now I look at that phrase, I know exactly what it means, and I recognise it, I can see what it is. So actually, joking aside, my Punjabi is actually improving. I can actually recognise a lot of phraseology, a lot of sentences now. So it means it has actually sunk in at last. And the final comment comes from Jasleen. Thank you, Jasleen, for this. Bravo, you both look dashing Singh Sardars, Angus and James. Well, all I would say to that, Jasleen, and to our audience, it is an absolute honour to be represented as a dashing Singh Sardar. That is something that James and I think we carry on our shoulders with absolute pride, James.
Absolutely, and it was a fun little project there, throwing that together on AI. So it was all fun in our honor and our privilege. So.
Indeed it was, but there we must bring the show to a close for another day as we have been beaten by the clock once again. But you have, of course, been watching Perspectives. Don't forget to keep those comments coming in. Loads have been coming in, really interesting ones. Thank you for those comments. Do keep them coming. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know things you'd like us to talk about. Let us know your perceptions on some of the stories that we like. And do keep that feedback, negative included. If you think we can change the format of the show or whatever, let us know. There were a couple of comments on that. We have read them and taken notice. So do let us know. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlodgetv.com on anything you want to talk to us directly about. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.